my friends. Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today. We are continuing the tragic case of Orsolya Gaal. Her killer has finally been caught, and we continue to get updates around this guy and what was going on and what led up to this. So I want to make sure I keep you updated on this story. Can't get lazy now that they caught him, right? There's more information coming out every single day, and that's exactly what I want to share with you. The first thing I want to share with you is Orsolya Gaal. She let her accused killer David Bonola into her home before repeatedly asking him to leave. Now, if you remember, originally when all this story started coming out, what were they saying? He knew where the spare key was. He must have used that spare key to get into her home. Come to find out, it looks like she let him into her home. So the queen's mom of two, 51 years old, taken way too early in this world. Rest in peace, Orsolya Gaal. And she willingly let her ex-handyman lover into her home early that Saturday morning of April 16th, sometime after midnight, before he allegedly knifed her to death following a heated argument where he ignored multiple requests to leave her home. He finally had his first court appearance, and this accused killer, David Bonola, 44 years old, slashed Gaal's throat first in an unthinkable outburst that left the married mother of two with 58 knife wounds. It is tragic what happened to her. And as we continue to find out, David and Orsolya did know each other. You see, the defendant, David, he went to her residence sometime between midnight and 4 in the morning to engage her in a verbal dispute. Because she knew him, she let him in her home. He then engaged in a verbal dispute, and unfortunately, she had to ask him multiple times to leave her home. But David Bonola, he refused to leave, and then the incident escalated with the unfortunate stabbing of Orsolya Gaal over 50 times. And this was before dragging her body in the hockey duffel bag down the road about a half a mile. He has since been charged with second-degree murder, criminal possession of a weapon, and tampering with physical evidence. He has been remanded without bail at the court hearing. At his court appearance, he wore his hair in a tight ponytail, along with wearing some black jeans, a blue button-down shirt, and black sneakers with no laces in it. He did have a Spanish interpreter and did not utter a word during the court proceeding. Now, Orsolya, she's Hungarian, so he can speak English. If he has had a 2-year relationship with her, why does he need a Spanish interpreter? That's news, huh? And the judge, Anthony Battisti, he ordered David Bonola to be held behind bars because of his confessions and his destruction of evidence. He was given medical attention and he has been put on suicide watch. David, he has laid out in detail what happened between him and Orsolya that night. He laid out the details on what happened, how it happened, and what he did following the events that has given this case national attention. He has allegedly twice confessed to killing Gaal and stashing her body in Forest Park after a dispute about their on and off again relationship became contentious. David first gave a matter-of-fact confession to cops, then gave a second one on video for prosecutors. The handyman, he readily spoke to detectives in the 112th precinct after he was picked up Wednesday night. This confession was very matter of fact, very thorough. He answered every question they had. And he didn't request a lawyer. He spoke the whole time, giving a detailed confession as to what happened. And after he was done spilling his guts to the cops and the detectives, he ate a bagel with cream cheese like it was nothing. And investigators, they had earlier said that they had recovered a bloody jacket belonging to David Bonola and blood-stained tissues at the park. Blood-soaked boots, a t-shirt, and bandages were also found at the murder scene. Let's talk about these boots for a second. We have found out about these new details that have led the police to David. 3 days after she was murdered, NYPD detectives, they fished out a pair of bloody brown boots from a sanitation truck after it pulled away from David Bonola's home. And one construction worker had shared it was in the afternoon the cops came and stopped the truck. He said they took some bags out of the truck and opened them up. They took a white bag from truck and a pair of brown boots. The boots weren't in any bag. They put everything in big brown paper bags and left. Law enforcement said before this they already had David Bonola on their sights because of them learning about him doing some work at Gaal's home and that he had an intimate relationship with her. So they were already looking to ask him questions. And so they were surveilling his home and waiting for the garbage to be picked up so they could look through it for clues. But it's unclear why detectives waited for the truck to leave the home in order to nab the footwear. These bloody boots, which Bonola allegedly wore while stabbing Gaal nearly 60 times, they were tested for DNA and are a crucial element in the case investigators are building against him. Meanwhile, the Queen's Defenders, this is a non-profit which is providing free representation to Bonola. They hired a private investigator who was spotted knocking on doors near Gaal's home on Friday afternoon. The private eye, who was contracted by the public defenders through JNL Investigations, they declined to comment about this, but the private eye was overheard asking neighbors if they knew how to get in touch with Gaal's family. At one point, a bartender from the Forest Hills station house, where Gaal had her last drink alone right before she was murdered, stopped by the family's house to check it out. And the private eye, he did speak with the bartender briefly. And that's what we know about the boots helping investigators lead them to David. Now, at the crime scene, there was this creepy note, a handwritten note that was left on her refrigerator, and it said, "Get a new handyman." This was before she was brutally stabbed to death. This handwritten memo, it was found by detectives that weekend at Gaal's Forest Hills $2.2 million home early on in the investigation. And so this is one of the things that did lead them to the handyman. And this note, it was an apparent reference to David Bonola. This is Gaal's family heating and air conditioning repairman. Now, police later did obtain a surveillance video that shows David Bonola returning home the morning of the murder with what appears to be crude bandages on one hand. He was seen walking down 114th Street near his Richmond Hill apartment around 6:05 in the morning. And this was just hours after cops say that he did what he did to Orsolya Gaal. In the clip, you can see that Bonola, he has what appears to be a white bandage wrapped around his left hand. He is seen making his way down the street in pants, a shirt, and no jacket, and wearing a black mask halfway down his face. Now, Bonola does have a public defender, David Strachan, and he said Thursday night that his client would apply for bail at a later date. I don't think they'll ever give this guy bail. Now, he is scheduled to go back to court April 26th, and he faces 25 years to life in prison if convicted. And we have now learned that the handyman, David Bonola, he used to leave creepy love notes for baristas at his local Starbucks. The handy paramour, he was charged Thursday in this brutal stabbing, and he is a married dad of 2. And he used to leave all these creepy love notes for baristas at his local Starbucks. He was a regular at the Austin Street coffee shop in Forest Hills, and he left female staffers so startled by his advances, they called the cops on him numerous times. One barista, Olivia Pikulinski, 21 years old, she said he would come up to us and ask for coffees and tell us that we looked pretty and make comments about how we look. She said he was creepy, he stalked people. It was known. Everyone knew he was a weird individual, especially in the Starbucks on Austin Street. Bonola, whose estranged wife and children also live in Queens, would also drop in the tip jar love notes and songs that he would make about them. That was according to Pikulinski. She said he even went as far as proposing to 2 of us, which is super unsettling because of how weird the interactions were. He was at the coffee shop multiple times a week and always ordered the same items: a dark roast pour over and a lemon loaf or banana nut loaf. And that was according to one former worker who used to work there. In between his cups of joe, David would frequently proposition female workers, handing them a note and a piece of jewelry as he asked them to be with him. Bonola, he came to the US from Mexico about 21 years ago and appears to have been an aspiring filmmaker who studied at the New York School of Interior Design. And this is according to police and his Facebook profile. And as I mentioned in my previous video, in the spring of 2020, he commented several times on photos posted to Gaal's Facebook page, calling her the most beautiful woman and loving numerous of her posts. I mentioned that David had came to the US from Mexico about 21 years ago, right? I just mentioned that. Well, come to find out, he was living in the country illegally when he allegedly murdered Orsolya Gaal. Bonola, a Mexican national, entered the US from Mexico about 21 years ago. This is according to the NYPD. And law enforcement sources revealed that he was living in New York in violation of immigration law when he was busted this week. And this was according to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They confirmed that it has lodged a detainer with Queens Central Booking where Bonola is currently held. According to an ICE spokesperson, ICE focuses its civil immigration enforcement priorities on the apprehension and removal of non-citizens who pose a threat to our national security, public safety, and border security. An ICE detainer, this is a written request to a local jail or law enforcement agency to hold a defendant for an additional 48 hours should the person get a release date. So it can decide whether to take the person into federal custody for deportation purposes. And so a possible kin of David Bonola was seen removing his belongings from his home. And so this would be a possible relative of David Bonola who was carting luggage and belongings out of his Richmond Hill home. 4 people, including a woman and 2 men, were seen bringing out 3 suitcases, 2 backpacks, a floral arrangement, and a plastic bag stuffed with belongings out of Bonola's Queens home. When the group was asked if they were related to Bonola, one of the men grunted no and declined any further comment. The group then loaded the belongings into a waiting taxi and took off. Moments later, a woman who also lives at the location but in a different unit said she wasn't sure who the people were and didn't want to say anything when asked about Bonola. I don't blame her. So you can only use your best judgment. I'm guessing it would be family that would have been taking that stuff out, or some really close friends, but there's a good chance they were relatives and very close to him, but we don't know for sure. Let me make that clear. And speaking on that note, get a new handyman. I want to share how, like, by posting a note on her refrigerator, because this was allegedly from Orsolya Gaal, who posted this get a new handyman on her fridge before she was brutally stabbed to death. They did have an on-again, off-again relationship, but I find it interesting that this month in April, that relationship started up again. And then when she went to end that relationship, I don't know if she had a guilty conscience, she wasn't interested, he was as weird as all the baristas are saying. Like, why was she drawn to him? I don't know. That's not for me to judge, but that relationship had re-sparked up earlier this month. So they had a relationship, the relationship stopped, and then earlier this month it started up again, and then when she went to end it again, that's when he chose to end her life. He must have really felt like I don't know. I don't understand. It was an affair. You should have known it wasn't gonna go much deeper. Like, what did you think you were getting yourself into? This is what breaks my heart for her. Okay? She was wrong to have this affair. Who knows how many more affairs? But that's the thing, is that you are risking your life when you do something like this, because you're playing with people's emotion. You're playing with your emotions. You're playing with the other person's emotions. And guess what? Things get too deep and that person can snap. You have to be careful for that stuff, because it does happen, unfortunately. So you have to understand that when you choose to go have this affair, you never know what's going to happen behind this. And it should never get to this type of ending, ever. But unfortunately, that's the risk that we're taking when we choose to do that. Because people lose their crap. And you don't want it to happen, but you've seen it happen. Maybe it never got this deep, but you've seen that person get so upset that they snap that one moment, say something they regret, do something, punch something, they do something that moment that they lose their crap. And according to police records, this guy didn't even have any police record. So this caught a lot of people off guard. But my friends, if you're going to risk doing these affairs, you gotta know, this is not the last time something like this will happen. Tragic ending to Orsolya Gaal's decision. Again, it should never go there. My friends, if you're going to take this risk, understand that when it comes time to end it, the other person might not be okay with ending it. No matter what they say when they go into it, know what you're doing. Preferably don't do it, but hey, we're human. We're known to be sinners. We're known to mess up. So understand what you're risking. My friends, that is the complete update around the tragic case of Orsolya Gaal. And now we'll see what continues to happen with David Bonola. My friends, thank you for joining me today. I'm Manny Rodriguez. I look forward to serving you again. Please stay safe out there, my friends. It's an ugly world we live in. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me. Hey, make sure you smash that subscribe button. That way you know when I upload content or I go live, you'll get notified. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Peace. Have a great day.